The US-China trade war is heating up again. Days after US trade officials met their counterparts in Beijing, US President Donald Trump says negotiations aren't yielding results.
Trade talks are continuing, and during the talks, the US will start on September 1st putting a small additional tariff of 10% on the remaining $300 billion of goods and products coming from China into our country. This does not include the $250 billion already tariffed at 25%.
In June, Washington had frozen a 25% tariff hike on Chinese exports worth $300 billion after the presidents of both countries met at the G20 summit in Osaka and agreed to resume talks. Those tariffs will now be imposed from the 1st of September at a lower rate of 10%. President Trump says he may hike the tariff rate if Beijing doesn't take steps to address US concerns soon. But the Chinese government says it's the US that's not keeping its word and it's threatening retaliatory measures.
This move severely violates the consensus the two leaders reached at Osaka, deviates from the correct path and is not constructive towards solving the problem. We are resolutely opposed to this and express our strong dissatisfaction. If America's plan to add these new tariffs becomes a reality, then China will have to take the necessary countermeasures.
The escalation in the US-China trade war is bad news for global markets. Oil prices fell by as much as 8% immediately after Trump's tweet, and equity prices are sliding across major stock markets in Asia, Europe and elsewhere.
These new tariffs on Chinese products will make trade relations with China even worse.
I think trade war between US and China is the top uncertainty for all the investment world.
The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank say trade protectionism is bad for business, and renewed trade tensions between the world's two largest economies could further slow down growth. Motheo Khoaripe, TRT World.
Well, let's get more on this now with Anna Ashton in Washington, D.C. She's the Business Advisory Services Director at the US-China Business Council. Welcome back to Money Talks, Anna. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, we might have seen this coming when Donald Trump attacked China earlier this week during the latest round of trade negotiations. But are you surprised by this announcement?
Maybe not entirely surprised, but certainly our member companies are quite concerned about the development. You know, Donald Trump is famous for his art of the deal, but the art of a deal is compromise. So in negotiations, we really don't do well when we have ultimatums.
Yes, it's not entirely clear why Donald Trump decided to act now and act by raising tariffs by this amount, but he has said that he believed China was deliberately stalling on these trade negotiations. He says he wants China to address America's trade concerns. What do you think he's trying to achieve here?
Well, it is interesting. In one of his tweets, he referenced the claim that China had not followed through with their agreement to purchase more agricultural products from the United States. The problem with that is that it's not clear what that agreement ever was. Even the announcements coming out from both countries after this latest round of talks were not in alignment. The U.S. said that there had been a commitment from China to purchase more agricultural products. China said that they had discussed purchasing more agricultural products. So if this is about agricultural products, I'm not sure that we even know what the goal is. What is the purchase that the U.S. administration wants China to make? But, these negotiations were never supposed to be about agricultural products. From the start, they were supposed to be about addressing tech transfer, IP protection, subsidies for state-owned enterprises, and industrial policies in China, things that make the market difficult for foreign companies to compete in, things that make the market unfair. And from the start, we've said tariffs are the wrong tool for that.
Okay, well, if and when these new tariffs come into effect in September, it would mean that essentially all of China's exports to the United States will be subject to tariffs. Do you think this prospect might then force China or make China more eager to address America's concerns?
I don't know that it will. I think that the Chinese government at this point feels like they have to hold their ground, that they are, not necessarily in a good faith negotiation with the United States. But it definitely is going to hurt the U.S. economy. President Trump likes to say that tariffs are paid by China, but that's just not true. They're paid by American companies, and American companies do what they can not to pass those costs on to consumers. But when there are tariffs on every single thing that is exported from China into the United States, that becomes pretty difficult. This is going to affect a lot of consumer goods like toys and iPhones and electronics, and there's no doubt that Americans are going to be paying for that straight from their pockets.
Yes, and we know that China has vowed to retaliate. Now, it could mean that China imposes tariffs on its own on US products, but it could also, I guess, resort to what some have termed the nuclear option, that is perhaps restricting rare earths exports to the United States, those materials that are essential for the manufacture of electronic products. It could also, I guess, further devalue the yuan. Do you think China might resort to those more drastic measures?
You're absolutely right that it's probably not going to be a lot more in the form of tariffs. They've pretty much exhausted what they can do on that front. Whether it will be, restrictions on rare earths or things along those lines is unclear, but I think it will be a lot of things that are more difficult to identify as definitely being retaliatory. It could be slower regulatory approvals for U.S. businesses that need those approvals for their operations in China. It could be nationalistic boycotts of U.S. products, or it could be the government and Chinese companies opting to do business with foreign companies that are not American because they're more reliable partners.
Okay, Anna Ashton, we'll have to leave it there, but we appreciate your analysis as always. Thank you.